Good evening, everybody. My name is Frank. I'll be your Planning Commission host for the evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, October 12th, 2021 meeting of the Yellow Springs Planning Commission. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Indeed. Doden.
Here.
Stiles.
Here.
Curlis.
Here.
Was that a here?
Yeah, here. Can you?
Thank you. Green.
Here.
Amend.
Here.
Thank you. Also present is Zoning Administrator Denise Swinger and Solicitor Breanne Parcels.
Okay, thank you very much. First thing I will do is just briefly go over tonight's agenda. We'll have a review of the minutes from the September 14th meeting. Then we'll talk briefly about a couple of communications that we have received. Then, excuse me, they'll have time for a council report. Laura, will there be a council report tonight?
I don't think so.
Okay, or possibly Josue. Will Josue have anything he wants to say? I'm not sure if he's here or not. Okay.
He's not on. He's not on.
Okay. Then there'll be a time called citizen comments, and that is the time for anybody, any citizens to comment for any item that's not on tonight's agenda. I'll repeat that when we come there. Then we have one consent agenda item about a minor subdivision for Doug Roberts. We have one public hearing for a conditional use application. And then we have old business where we are continuing conversation about parking plans review. Then new business and agenda planning and adjournment. So that's what we'll be doing tonight. We'll start by reviewing the minutes from the September 14th, 2021 meeting. And I will just flip through them one page at a time for members of the Planning Commission and ask if anybody has any corrections or changes that need to be made one page at a time. So anything anybody has on page one? Page two. Page three. Page four. Page five. Okay, hearing no changes or corrections that need to be made, I'll move that we approve the minutes from the September 14th, 2021 meeting.
I seconded.
Second, would the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes, Stiles.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Amend.
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, on communications, I believe we have a couple of letters from, Mellons regarding the conditional use application tonight. And I think we'll talk about those in more detail when we come to the actual conditional use agenda item. And then there was a letter that came electronically this afternoon regarding parking on Phillip Street that I think we'll cover when we come to the discussion of parking later on tonight. So I think were those the only letters, I think, Judy? Yeah,
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Let's move on then to Laura. You do not have a council report tonight?
I guess the only thing of note is that council did pass a resolution sort of committing to work on the Mills Lawn green space issue. It's not a very, I would say, strongly worded resolution, but it is a direction. So I just want to report that was passed out of council last time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. So then we'll move on to the citizen comments portion of the agenda. And once again, this is for any comments for any items that are not on tonight's agenda. And so in order to make a comment, if there's anybody out there, you'll either have to wave your hand to try to get the attention of Judy. Are you hosting the meeting?
Yes.
Or in the upper right, I believe it's in the upper right-hand corner of this screen, there'll be a place that you can hit a button you can hit to electronically raise your hand. And I'll give people a few seconds to see if there's anybody who wants to make any citizen comments. Not sure what that was.
People need to mute if they're not
Right.
participating right now.
Kay has
Okay.
her hand up.
Ah,
Yes, hi, everybody. Kate
Oh, hi,
Kinninger.
okay.
I'm not sure I'm supposed to be here because I was going to comment on something that's on the agenda tonight. So I didn't know that that was not allowed. I thought this was the time
Well,
to
no,
get comments.
Well, you'll be able to comment on those things when we're actually covering them during the agenda. So this is just a period for any items that aren't on tonight's agenda.
Okay.
So does
All
that make
right.
sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And I'm not making sense. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Anybody else out there? Okay. Then we will go ahead to the consent agenda item. Denise, did you want to talk about this a little bit at all, or?
No,
Okay.
everybody
This is about
received it. Yeah.
Yeah. We received the information about this 20-some days ago. And so if there's no objections from any members of council, we could, we need a motion to approve the consent agenda item. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda item.
And I'll second.
Sir, second. And would the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes, Stiles,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Amend,
Michael's probably tuned into it, don't you think so?
Amend.
Yes.
Thank you. And Curlis,
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, taken care of. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to the public hearing. The conditional use application. Steve Eddington has submitted a conditional use application for an expansion of the Gulch's outdoor patio area and mobile vending. Denise, would you like to summarize the staff report for us, please?
Yes. Steve Eddington is here. He's actually, he's on Zoom, as well as Kim Baldwin, who's representing the ownership of the building. Steve Eddington is the owner of the Gulch. And he, back in 2007, came to Planning Commission to receive approval for the outdoor patio that's at the rear of the property, or at the rear of the building at 128 Dayton Street. With COVID, there was expansions allowed. What he wanted to do was really to provide some social distancing, but also provide more space for the patrons, and wanted to make it a permanent expansion. This expansion will eliminate 3 parking spaces, but he's gaining an additional 8 because he cleaned up the parking lot in the back, took out all of the brush and the trees and shrubbery, and laid gravel down, and actually now has 22 parking spaces in the rear of the property. He also is requesting permission for an occasional, he would have a food truck similar to like what you might see at the YS Brewery. Well, they'll rotate different food trucks, but it would be under Mr. Eddington's control. And let's see, I think that pretty much takes care of it. Now, there was a letter that you received in your packet, and you can ask Mr. Eddington, who's here tonight, about that. But it's my understanding from talking to him prior to the meeting that the authors of that letter have met with both parties And that's Steve as well as Kim Baldwin, who's representing tonight, and have taken, I believe they've ironed out any issues that they have, but they can speak to that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Denise. Members of the Planning Commission, does anybody right now have any initial concerns or questions about this application?
So
No, yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Well, so since this is an establishment that sells liquor, is there anything special about having a patio back there? Are there any additional rules or anything that goes along with that?
Yeah, they'll have to have it fenced in. And you'll notice at the end of the report, I had a couple conditions on that because of the fencing. We'd prefer that the fencing that they use, whatever is decided with the Ohio Department of Liquor, we need it to be some sort of temporary fencing for a while, or fencing with the understanding that it's going to be his responsibility to replace, because we have a stormwater project that's already gone out to bid, should be awarded soon, and that is going to cut through where this outdoor patio is right now. He has laid asphalt down, and that's fine. And when the sewer line repair is done there, for the stormwater, I'm sorry, not sewer, stormwater, we will, as part of that, patch that asphalt back in there. But I don't know about the fencing, so I wanted to just make it clear that, we would prefer that he have some sort of temporary fencing, or maybe it could even be something where it's, a panel of it can come off, and then they can do their work and then be able to get their equipment in there to do it.
Okay. And are there any issues with the fact that it's that entrance to the parking area there is only one car wide, and that people go both ways?
I've never seen a problem with it before.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't. And they've had that outdoor patio there, like I said, for 14 years.
Okay.
Susan, did you have a question? Nope, you're muted.
Thank you. Are they going to be playing music on the patio? Do we know?
You'll have to ask Steve that.
Okay, because I know I have heard over past years of a concern about sound from neighbors.
If, Frank, I don't know if you want to have an opportunity for the
Yeah,
owner.
we'll get to, I think, just want to make sure if anybody else on Planning Commission has anything to say before we bring Steve in. Yeah, Sarah?
Do we have a site plan to show like where this dumpster is in relation to the back of the property, to the neighbor's property? And if there's a plan for any screening fences?
He can talk to that because that came in, that wasn't a part of my report. The dumpster really isn't related to this use, but he can also talk to what plans they made to change that. All of these are great questions, but Steve can answer those.
Okay, well, why don't we, Steve, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not seeing you show up on my screen, but I hear your voice there somewhere. How about if we start with, well, first the question regarding the letter that was sent by the property owners in the back there and the concerns that they addressed. Would you like to speak to their concerns and tell us what the situation is?
Yes. I'll let Kim Baldwin speak to that, as she and Bob Baldwin met personally with the authors of the letter, and we remedied some of the issues and came to an agreement to remedy the others.
Okay.
Okay, as far as the dumpsters go, we moved that almost immediately within a couple of days closer to the Gulch itself, so it's not sitting up along the fence of any of the houses that are currently have tenants people living in them. So they were very pleased that we took action immediately. There were a couple tires that were laying close to the fence, which, someone dumped those, but we did remove those off site also immediately. As far as the fence, For years, they had a tree line which provided some privacy. And since we have removed those, we realized that it is an inconvenience for them and they don't have that privacy anymore. So we have two things that we can do. One is plant more trees, but that's not going to solve the issue immediately. It's going to take time for them to grow and to fill in the area. So we've talked to the couple that wrote the letter, and we have come to the conclusion that a privacy fence might be the best route to take. So we're going to get an estimate from a couple of people, and then we're going to get together with them again and decide what route we're going to take. We're leaning more towards the privacy fence, as they have younger grandchildren there, and they just feel that they would be safer to have a privacy fence there. And as far as the drainage issue, there is a corner that needs some more gravel put in it, but we're going to wait until we resolve the fence issue. And so they seem real pleased that's the route we're taking at this time.
Okay. Yeah, Susan, did you have a question?
Oh, it's about the music.
Or was your question spoken to?
I had the question about the music.
Yeah.
Are there plans to play music outside?
Yeah, I mean, I can't. Okay. We hadn't planned on it. If I did anything, it'd be during the day. Our music is really set up to be played inside. That's where all of our equipment is. And there is no electric out there to support any kind of electric music. Acoustic may, but I don't know that how much acoustic music would bother other folks. Also, the type of fence that we're going to be using is called a solid board fence, which will be more effective at reducing noise levels than the current shadow box style fence that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, did you have a question, or was it spoken to, do you think?
No, my question was definitely about the privacy fence. I know it's not in our code right now. I think we need to address that later in the meeting, though, about asking council about the fences, especially if we're going to increase parking in a lot of places. Can we make the fence conditional upon the approval, since there is kind of a flipping of parking spaces with this addition? Denise?
Brianne, I'm going to defer to Brianne.
Well, I mean, as far as conditions that can be imposed, you're looking at, your general versus specific, and because of the use and noise being a use, you can say that would be a reasonable condition if the rest of Planning Commission said that that's one of the conditions that's not necessarily recommended by the zoning administrator, but it would help with noise or privacy concerns.
Do you have a question, Laura? Oh, okay. Saw your hand and I wasn't sure if you were waving or adjusting your camera. For the applicant, Steve, is there anything else you'd like to say?
The question about the last comment about a privacy fence, now that's for the parking lot, right? Okay.
Yes.
So you're tying that in with the patio that is looking to be expanded? The parking lot's been in existence for over 40 years.
Steve, I'm looking at the application where it says the current patio enclosure would be extended.
That's correct.
So that's what I'm looking at,
Right.
not necessarily the parking lot fence.
Okay, that's what I'm speaking to, not what I'm speaking to is the fence that was brought up in the letter.
In the letter, which isn't part of the patio enclosure.
Right.
Did you have a question, Sarah? You're looking.
So what I'm speaking of is a fence between the addition and the neighbors in whatever location is most conducive to your property. So I guess we could say there could be a privacy fence that blocks all noise right along the patio, or you could put a privacy fence at the back of the parking lot if that's what you choose to do. But there should typically in cities and villages, when they're, right between commercial and residential property, usually there is a requirement for a screening fence just for the security of both the business and the residents behind it. I know it's not in this code now. We should probably talk about that. So I guess we could, if you want to contest that, we could say there should be a privacy fence either at the patio or at the back of the parking lot.
Well, I think to me, because that's part of the plan, is to erect a 6-foot tall fence around.
Yeah, and that would fit the requirement.
Yeah, because you're required to have a fence around the patio, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. But then you were talking with the neighbors about the possibility of building a privacy fence on the property line to help with their problems, with their specific privacy problems. Is that correct?
Yes, that's a separate issue.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Does that clarify it, Sarah?
Yeah, I think so. I just want to make sure we're offering at least some solution in writing. Beyond just the noise and everything, obviously with the increased parking and the changes that are happening because of the expansion, there's going to be more headlights going into their house and that kind of effect, which, I want to make sure we're considerate of.
Okay.
Well, and the neighbor was also concerned about people walking through their yard and going over that fence. So
yeah.
That one's a tough one, Steve, because who are they? I mean, who can say they're patrons of the Gulch?
True, but without the trees there, they saw it as an easier way to walk through. So,
well, I think. Wait a minute. I think that was an ongoing issue. Can you clarify that, Steve? Because the trees haven't been removed for that long, or have they?
That corner was fairly clear already, so people are hopping over that fence and actually going over another fence over toward Railroad Street. So I wouldn't think that those are my patrons.
Okay. So where do we end up with so we can't make it a condition that there has to be a privacy fence on the end of the parking lot, because that's not what this application is about. This application is only about the patio.
You got it. You pretty much got it. I mean, the application is for the patio expansion, which is the patio that's already there has been approved under a conditional use permit for the past 14 years. So the application is for the patio expansion. Now, again, the enclosure of the patio is required by the Department of Liquor Control, but we have the issue where the permanent fence probably can't be installed until after the project is done for the storm sewer.
Around the patio.
Right.
And then the fence at the end of the parking lot is something to be negotiated with the neighbor.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Because when you're looking at your requirements for conditional uses, you're looking at the specific provisions of 1262-03, which relate to impacts on neighboring properties, but it's not the patio expansion as much as parking and the other issues that have been raised that aren't necessarily related to the patio expansion itself. These other concerns have been raised about the trespassing and people cutting through and that sort of thing.
And the water runoff, is that where does that come in?
This is Kim Baldwin. The water runoff, there is a corner where it's a little lower, so it is angled towards their lot. However, when we discussed it yesterday, we're going to put more gravel down, but it doesn't make sense to do that now until we come to an agreement on what we're going to do about the fence. Or we're going to plant more trees or put up a privacy fence.
Okay.
It would just be digging into more gravel. So they agreed that it was okay to wait until we decide what we're doing with the fence.
Okay. All right. That sounds great. So you guys are working it out.
Yes. I feel that we are. I think we had a good meeting yesterday and everybody's in agreement with the route we're going to take.
Any other questions or concerns from any members of the Planning Commission? Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on this conditional use application. So if there's any members of the public who would like to comment on this conditional use application for the expansion of the patio with the Gulch, again, either wave your hand and try to get our attention or hit the electronic raise your hand button on your computer screen. I think it's in the upper right-hand corner, and we'll give people a few seconds to raise their hands. Okay, you seeing anything, Judy? Oh, you're muted.
You should be good to go.
Kay has a comment.
Oh, there's Kay. Okay. Just thought. Yes, Kay, good. State your name, please.
Thank you. My name is Kay Kenninger. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I live at 135 North Walnut. That is next door to Steve and Nancy Deal. I'm here tonight because I am opposed to the extension of the patio, and it's based on noise. And Susan, thanks for bringing up that concern. Noise from the Gulch is pretty much a constant irritation about 6 nights a week. And again, this is our experience at our house in our backyard. It gets louder and louder through the evening, kind of hits a crescendo about 11 to 12. Sometimes on the weekends, I really do ask myself, is someone getting killed over there? Am I overreacting? I don't think so, or I wouldn't be asking myself those questions. People have complained about the noise over the years. Kind of goes in cycles and gets better, and then it comes back up again. The idea of the extension of the patio is a problem for me because of math. More people means more noise, and I'm really concerned about the noise level going up. This is true all year round because people who smoke will smoke when it's really cold and they'll go outside. So it's not just a summer thing and it's not just a weekend thing. So I really would not like to see an extension of the patio. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kay. So is there anybody else who would like, any other members of the public who would like to comment on this application?
Frank, I'm not seeing any hands up.
Okay.
So are there additional measures that they can do to decrease?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and close the public hearing, then, Sarah. So, and now we'll bring it back to the Planning Commission. So, Sarah, what were you going to say?
Sorry, I knew where we were going. I apologize. So is there any additionally noise buffering measures that the applicant can put forward to prevent the spread of noise throughout the neighborhood with the increased amount of people that are going to be able to be out on the patio?
Yeah, Steve, could you respond to that, please?
This is actually the first complaint that I've heard about noise from the patio that's been ongoing. It sounds like all day long, every day's kind of what I'm understanding the noise level is. I'm not aware of it. If you guys have a suggestion, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But, and, like I say, the patio's been there for, 14 years? And this would be the first time I've had a member of the public make comment to that effect that there's a noise issue.
You said that the fence that you're planning to put up for this is going to be a solid panel fence?
Yes, it is, which currently we have what they call a shadow box fence, which is staggered boards, which has openings. I'd be willing to make the whole enclosure a solid board fence. And also with increased seating, more people would be sitting down. So the fence would actually provide more of a barrier or noise than people that have to stand because of our limited seating.
Yes, Susan.
But Denise, I'm wanting to ask you, so what would be, because I think that the fence needs to be there. I think it needs to be the most that can help buffer the sound. But I'm wondering, what can a resident do who lives in the vicinity if it's noisy then? Do they call the police department? Do they call you? Who do they call?
They call the police department.
And so they should really make a complaint?
The police department has a noise meter that they can come out and do a noise assessment. Now, are they going to do the noise meter? Probably they're just going to go to the source and ask them to disperse or calm it down because, they get those calls a lot, loud music, so if it's an ongoing thing, then they do have access to a noise meter to actually get a decibel calculation on that. But that would be the phone call. The phone call would be to the PD and say it's awfully noisy over there, and they can check on it.
And I also wanted to ask about what Steve brought up about the drainage, because I know putting some gravel in an area isn't going to necessarily do anything for the drainage. I mean, it's many times there are other solutions. So what are Nancy and her husband to do if this doesn't take care of it? Do they contact you, and then through zoning, do you make sure that it's resolved for them?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. You're not allowed to have stormwater runoff onto your neighboring properties. So if they go to fix it and it becomes an issue, it doesn't resolve the issue. There's lots of things they can do, infiltration trenches and other ideas, but they would have to resolve that.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions? Any other members of the Planning Commission questions or concerns at this point?
Well, I just want to make a comment, because this happens a lot in the village, and I understand noise can be a problem, but people are allowed to make noise, and businesses are allowed to conduct their business, including music, up to a certain decibel level. So I just hope that the police will use their sound meter, because I think a lot of times businesses are within the law, but they're treated as if they aren't. So I understand that it's a sensitive issue, but businesses also have the right to, especially entertainment businesses, make a certain amount of noise during certain hours.
Okay.
So that has to be kept in mind as well.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Sarah. Oh, I'm sorry, Laura.
How long have you had the business there?
The Gulch has been there for over 40 years.
Right. It often predates when other people have bought their houses. I guess what I'm saying is people know you're there. And to me, that goes into the equities of the situation.
Yeah, Sarah, were you going to say something?
Oh, I want to know the height of the privacy fence they're planning on putting up.
Yeah, is that at the end of the parking lot that they're talking about with the neighbors, you mean?
Both. I just looked at like the typical height to reduce noise in a patio.
6 foot.
6 foot.
So wouldn't a 7-foot fence reduce the noise much more? Especially if some of your clientele are 6 feet tall.
I'd go 8 foot instead of 7.
That's looks like a very cost-effective way to deal with the neighbor's situation.
If zoning doesn't have a problem, I'd go 8 foot.
So the way the code reads for that, it's a weird thing. If you're in a residential area, if the neighbors wanted to put that fence up, it's 6 feet. If the non-residential area wants to put that fence up, it can be 8 feet. However, for every foot over, it needs to come in at 1.5 feet. So they would lose 3 feet of their parking area in order to have an 8-foot fence. Yeah. So the only other option they would have is they'd have to go to the BZA for a variance to the setback.
Right.
But is that, Denise, is that the fence? So that's the fence at the property line. What about the enclosure around the patio? How can that be 8 feet tall?
I guess that's a Brianne question. I don't see an issue with it, but because it's not an issue for the setback. Okay, it's not.
That wouldn't be.
So to me, it's 7-foot fence. They could go ahead and do that without a variance, but that would only be for the outdoor patio.
Yeah, only on the outdoor patio part.
Yeah,
right.
Which is actually what the planning commission is considering is the patio portion.
Okay.
And that might make the most sense anyway, since that's where the noise would emanate from more so than the parking lot anyway. So, and a 6-foot privacy fence would get the headlights and stuff like that. That would be from the parking lot. So does that make sense to you, Steve?
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, we all sort of followed that.
For the enclosure, that is.
Right. Right. Okay. Anything
So what
else
I'm seeing online is you can do a 6-foot and then you can do it angled going in so it blocks the noise going, or you could go up higher and then that blocks it. It does about the same thing. So hopefully then everyone's happy.
Right. All right. Anything else from any members of the Planning Commission about this? Okay. Somebody like to make a motion?
So I want to quickly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to quickly state that there was that condition. So in that motion.
About the fencing being temporary?
I saw it, Denise.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Laura.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the patio expansion per the planning staff recommendation. That staff recommendation includes the expansion and allowing a food truck with the following condition. And this is something Denise was about to talk about, that there initially be a temporary fence because of a stormwater upgrade the village is about to do, or the landowner has the option, if the landowner puts up a permanent fence, that the landowner will have to replace the fence at landowner's cost due to the stormwater upgrade.
Okay, I'll second that. And would the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes, amend.
Yes.
Curlis,
Yes.
Stiles,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Thank you.
Look, I do have a clarifying question. Was that going to be, I didn't hear a 7-foot fence.
I didn't say what size fence.
So I request we do a modification, adding that the fence should be at least.
Wait. We already took a roll.
You already did it. I let it go because I thought staff recommendation. I figured you'd just sketch it.
Well, my question though is there's no, they don't need a special permission to put a 7-foot fence on their property, and there is no setback, so there's no special requirement there. Is there, Denise?
No, there isn't a requirement that they have to do a 7-foot fence, but I thought the conversation and then what Steve was agreeing to and everything was that would resolve the neighbor's concern.
About the
But
noise,
I just didn't hear it in the motion, so I didn't.
Right.
No.
I would rather do the 7-foot fence for various reasons, because the 7-foot fence gives us even more security in our back patio area.
Right.
So,
Okay.
if I could have gone 8, I would have.
You can go 8.
Can I?
Yes.
Yeah, around the
See,
patio.
everyone's coming 8-foot lengths, so it's easier that way.
In a non-residential area, because you not have to worry about the setbacks with where the outdoor patio is, you can go 8.
We'll go as high, 7 to 8 foot.
Okay.
And should
All right.
we amend our motion?
What I'll do instead of that is I will just put it into a letter of agreement that I'll have
Okay.
Steve sign.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And I think that's all we have for our public hearings tonight. And so we can go on to the old business item, which is the parking plan review. Did you want to speak about this a little bit, Denise?
Yes. So as everyone is aware, parking has been coming up for decades as an issue in the downtown area. And there had been at one point a few years ago a proposal to turn Beatty Hughes Park into a parking lot, and that didn't bode well with the community. So staff, when the comprehensive land use plan was being done, staff met with the consultant and had some suggestions for ways that we could do parking without having to pave over a park, by doing some on-street parking, angling instead of parallel, which enables you to have more spaces. Some cutouts along Corey Street to allow people who want to bike on the bike path to not have to come into the downtown. There's having a little parking area at the front of Beatty Hughes Park to make it more accessible, so it can be used more off of Corey Street. And then, we're also looking at parking on Cemetery Street. We own some property there. We're going to increase some parking there as well. So there's a variety of some options. There was opposition to the angled parking on Phillips and Elm Street, and council at that time then just didn't add the parking plans into the comprehensive land use plan. So when they did that vote, whether they realized it or not, I don't know, but they actually removed all of our parking plans. So council is amenable to bringing that back. They've heard from the Downtown Business Association, who was also supportive of increasing the parking downtown in these ways. Another suggestion that we had was along East North College Street. It's a very wide street. There really isn't anything, buildings that are there, and with some wayfinding signage and some angled parking, that can be another location where people could actually be able to walk downtown within 5 minutes or less. So what I would like to have happen tonight is for Planning Commission to look at this and to make a recommendation to council, because council does want to move forward with this. Now, what I'm asking for is, what do you think about a parking study? I mean, staff kind of is at the point where we're like, do we want to spend $25,000 to $50,000 to have us tell us things that we already know, as far as we know we want to increase parking? Or is there some other type of inventory? I know that Laura had come up with a suggestion, and Laura, I can't remember what it was now. So something that's a little bit different than a really detailed parking study. What do you think about the idea of a parking map and wayfinding signage and just a general recommendation to council of how we should move forward with this. So we do have the renderings here if you want to share the screen for that. And I just want to just launch into have a discussion with all of you.
So Denise, the two things you did you mention the adding more parking spots to the lot around the village offices? Because there seemed to be quite a big increase in the parking there. And then also there's the where the old grain elevator was on Railroad Street, and the parking study is showing an old picture. They're already using much more of that lot, now, and maybe not the most efficiently. There's a lot of like sort of ways for people to travel through the lot. Maybe we could, maybe they could look at it again and figure out how to get more cars in there.
The Railroad Street it does have an easement that runs along the building where the Yellow Springs Community Foundation is, and it's an access easement that runs all the way back towards the back of the parking lot. So there isn't really anything you can do within that access easement. But you're correct. Johnny Burns had removed a lot more brush and things, and actually was able to expand that parking area. But we haven't gotten to the point where we're paving it and creating striping yet, because we're not sure what council's final decision is on what they want to do with that lot. I mean, obviously it's going to be parking, but it may also have a business or something there as well, or some sort of building.
Okay. It just when I think about the parking in town, the parking that's sort of clustered around downtown, where people know where the lots are, it seems to, be easier for people who aren't that familiar with Yellow Springs to find. So that, because it's next to the village offices, which is another big lot, and even the Cemetery Street idea, because people are already used to parking there along whatever that is, Xenia Avenue, that these are places that people are already aware of the parking.
Yes, and we think that we can probably have at least 60 spaces there. There are things we can do. There was a lot of pushback. I know Johnny received a lot of pushback from the community when we wanted to take the tennis court that is at the John Bryan Center and remove it, because it really wasn't being used very much at all. And he basically then took where the basketball court was, pushed it back to where the tennis court was, and then created an extra parking area. And as he has said, that parking lot is full all on weekends. It's used a lot. So, but we did get a lot more spaces out of that. We could reconfigure the John Bryan parking lot and maybe get a few more spaces. But right now it has a tree lawn in there with trees. And I think that we could maybe try some of these other things first. And then that would be something maybe later on down the road if needed.
Okay. Well, their study showed they took out that little circle there where you drop off your utility bill, and they expanded the parking right to the edges. And
I know.
It was surprising how many more spots they got in. I really couldn't believe it. And, I counted them.
True. It's true. There's a lot more. Yeah, that's
okay.
True.
Okay.
Denise, can you tell us in the last 3 years how many additional spots the village has added in the downtown area?
Not off the top of my head. I know the railroad. Well, I wish Johnny was on here tonight, because he would know how many were added in that area. That was probably 20 spaces to where the tennis court used to be, or where it was actually the basketball court that was moved back. And he's probably added at least that many more just by clearing out the brush and straightening up the railroad.
I think I've heard last I heard, I remember it being 75, and that's before the Railroad Street brush clearing. So
we didn't reconfigure the John Bryan parking lot other than it's possible. I don't know. Johnny's not on tonight, but I'm not sure.
And I have
Denise, I just counted from. Oh, go ahead. I counted the parking lot where the tennis court was, and it looks like it's about 36 parking spots were added where that tennis court was.
Okay. Thank you.
Who owns the Children's Center lot?
I think that's Antioch.
You mean the lot that's next to the Children's Center?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Antioch.
Because okay, so we put that in the plan, but we don't own it, and it's not, okay.
Yeah.
And the Walnut Street configuration, has the schools approved that? Like, do they want that configuration on Walnut Street that's shown in that plan?
Which configurations do you mean, Laura?
Well, if you look at on the beautiful renderings, the Walnut Street, it's like a drop off.
Oh, okay. Right.
There's a drop off lane.
Oh, in the front. Yeah, that's in the renderings, but that wasn't anything we were going to even take into consideration right now. We would have to get their permission, and I don't know how that would work.
I mean, to me, the gimmies, the ones that aren't hard to approve, are the East North College Street idea, the Cemetery Street expansion, the Walnut Street part, the village property, whatever we want to do, and then that Children's Center lot, if I guess Antioch College wants it. Those are the gimmies, I think. I think the much harder ones go from there. So that's a whole lot right there.
Well, I mean, I guess help me, Laura, understand harder in what aspect, because the Phillips and Elm Street, we have a very wide right of way there. We have existing gravel. It would be just making the improvement.
Yeah, so when you do, if you work with ODOT, for example, and you want to do a major change in a roadway, there's like a certificate of need. So the question is, what is the need? And since this topic has come up, I have really paid attention on weekends, on sunny, beautiful, busy weekends in Yellow Springs. I have purposely gone over to Elm and Phillips to park. And let me tell you that there is ample parking, unused spaces, even on the busiest, sunniest days. And I think there are a lot of residents on here who will say the same, that there simply is no need for the Elm and Phillips Street nose-in parking. I guess that's my first reason, is that there's not really a need. My second reason, and I don't know if you know this, but Sarah might know it from insurance work, backing accidents are the most preventable and most dangerous type of accident, because and nose-in parking where you have limited visibility, especially on a street with this configuration, it's actually to me, you're adding danger to that street. Now, there are communities that have, like Fairborn, where they have that nose in, but yet you're not backing out into traffic. Like you're backing out into your own little...
The reverse angle.
Yeah, you're backing out into just a service road kind of thing with a boulevard that separates it. Mm-hmm. And I just, my own experience, even backing out of my own driveway on busy Livermore, it's so dangerous in terms there's pedestrians, there's bikes, there's car. I mean, I just don't even do it. Let alone having visibility limited by, say, a car parked on each side of you. So that's the secondary reason. To me, really, the first reason is there's plenty of parking there every Saturday and Sunday now. So
yeah, well, I mean, then let me give a flip side argument on that, because to me the parking, now if you want to do it if you want to make the suggestion that it be parallel, but I think the improvement needs to happen, because I don't know that people know that they can park there. I mean, it's just this gravel that's laying there. There's not any striping or signage. So if we have wayfinding signs, you might see a difference where people actually will go, oh, wow, this is pretty close to downtown. I mean, I could see that. I mean, I could take the opposite argument and say, well, maybe they don't know that they can park there because it isn't improved. So, yeah. I mean, if you feel that it's an issue for safety with the nose in, well, we can do the same with parallel, but we're losing a lot of parking spaces. But however, we could still do it that way.
Yeah. Sarah, did you have
just a couple things? As for safety, as soon as they started to have cars with the backup cameras and the alerts, the backing out started to become far of a less issue. I think having the sidewalks adjacent to those, where you have the backing out parking spots on either side of the road is an important feature, so that people aren't tempted to walk or bike on the street at that point as well. And I think that takes up a lot of the risk personally. And I do know having them that way adds a whole lot of spaces. It's a considerable amount more. And I think with the sidewalks being in place, I think it's okay. I myself, I mean, I didn't know I could park over there even. I know that at street fair, I've seen people do it, but I've also seen people park in people's yards at street fair. So this seems like a very easy, simple solution for a problem. And I think it's important. I want to hear from the downtown businesses, because I think, they hear more from the public than we do about people coming into town, what problems they're having and the need that's there. I think their opinion needs to be heard.
Yeah, other members of Planning Commission, Susan.
Well, I just want to say that I think we need to not only think about right now the amount of parking needed, but we need to be looking at the future. And if we have the new comedy club, even though there are going to be spaces, lots for that, we're going to be possibly bringing up many more people into town. And so we need to be thinking about the available parking for people that not only come in for that, but then are coming in for other things that stay on. And I think what we have right now may not be adequate. And I also did want to mention, I like the idea of the spaces at Beatty Hughes, because I think that would make it a much more usable park.
I forgot to say something. I think we've done multiple parking studies. I think this is an excellent starting point. And I think it would be prudent to go ahead and, send what we have up to council, put those in place. And then if there needs to be additional parking, then we pay the money to do an additional parking study. This looks like a fantastic plan that's been very well thought out.
So the question about the parking on Phillips and Elm, and people not knowing that they can park there, I wonder whether like some signage to tell people that it's okay to park, to start with, and see whether people actually really do want to park that far away from downtown. If people do start to use it, then maybe it would be worthwhile, changing things around. I mean, this is something that's, with what's going on with Mills Lawn, this is an area that's somewhat in flux. We may have, different ideas about that as Mills Lawn, could potentially change. But, and I like the Betty Hughes idea also. I guess I'm still in favor of giving people parking where they can orient themselves. People know where the lots are. If we can make the lots that we have now at the Bryan Center and Railroad Street and add a Cemetery Street one, the people, they've got a habit of knowing that there's parking spots there. So if we give them more, they'll use those spots. We know that they'll fill up those lots. Whereas, sending people further away, I don't know that people will use it. I feel like people are reluctant to go, even a little distance away from where they want to get to.
I think just sort of along with that, I think in addition to signage, I think I know a number of communities when back in the days when I used to travel places, I would find parking just on, with using an online application in communities. And so, probably getting something like that built into the Yellow Springs, into our website that just shows visitors to town where the parking lots are can probably do a lot for helping people.
Frank, I agree with that too, because, we are really oriented to doing a lot of studies, and we put a lot of money into that, but this might be being able to put that money into creating an online parking app and mapping would be so much more beneficial. Let people know where the parking already exists. And I agree with that.
Because, personally, I mean, just based on the letter and based on the conversation, I think, spending the $25,000 to $50,000 for an additional study, I think, as somebody said, I'm forgetting who said it, to tell us what we pretty much already know, does seem like a waste of money. So
well, but that's where I think we don't know, because and the residents on Elm and Phillips are about to speak, they will tell you there's no need for more parking on Elm and Phillips. So leave that aside. We'll let them speak. Mm-hmm. There's one other thing that's not in this plan that we have brought up before in some forum, and the response from, at least that I recall, Terry Holden, and I hope I'm not putting words in her mouth, but someone asked, what about Mills Lawn's parking lot on the weekends? Is the public allowed to use that? And I believe her answer was, we've never been asked. And so the question is, could the village lease that lot for public parking purposes on the weekends? So that's just another idea. It's a ready-made parking lot right in the downtown area. Thank you.
Frank, I just want to ask you a question, maybe Brianna as well. My understanding is Planning Commission is not debating the whether or not to have parking on Elm and Phillips. What you're debating is, do you send this parking recommendation up to council because your sense is that they want a parking recommendation from you, and then
and so we're trying to get a sense for what a recommendation to council is. That's what you're looking for, right, Denise?
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, my point was that I think if I were to vote right now, part of my recommendation would not be to vote for a $25,000 to $50,000 parking study. But, does that make sense?
I'd second that too. I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah. But now, are we going to have a public hearing on this, Judy?
You don't need to. It's not a public hearing issue. You've been asked by council to offer them a recommendation regarding the parking issue. You do have Jamie's got a hand up, so.
Well, and just a clarification perhaps for Denise and Brianne. Any decisions that get made down the road about what to do with any of these possible spaces for parking, is that something that's just magically going to happen overnight, or what would the process be for let's just say, somebody wanted to put parking on Elm Street. What would the process be for doing parking on Elm Street?
Well, Denise can tell you what the process has been previously, but the issue with the parking in general, because this was separated from the comp plan essentially, and council's asking for a recommendation from Planning Commission. They have not necessarily said they want a legislative recommendation from Planning Commission. So that's why it's an action item and discussion for old business tonight, but you're not being asked to submit a text amendment or an ordinance. You're being asked to simply give council a recommendation. Council of its own initiative could decide to come up with an ordinance or to revise the current codified ordinances with respect to parking. And when Raven was here, she actually went through and did, Denise, you may have access to that document, the hodgepodge of, 1 hour parking and 2 hour parking and and where those certain parking zones were. But as you said, Frank, in terms of doing something that's more in line of a policy and putting something on the website, council wouldn't necessarily need legislation for that. It could just be a matter of a policy recommendation from Planning Commission that this is the direction we think we should go. And council, please put it in the budget for next year to do that.
Yeah, Denise?
Yeah, and I mean, Public Works, that would be something that would then be a budget line item that they, if, Planning Commission or council gives the green light to do some of this stuff, then that would come out of Public Works.
I would like to hear from the public.
So
I think we should. I think
I wanted to ask about the, so all of these renderings that we have, were these the ones that came out of the plan?
Out of the comp plan, yes.
Because I'm also, I guess I'm agreeing with Frank and with Sarah that I don't think there needs to be a study, but I would like for council to consider all of these renderings. They may not take them all, but I think it's certainly worthwhile. And I think they were very well thought out.
Okay, I think I would like to give members of the public at least a brief opportunity to comment on this issue, and bearing in mind that we're not making any policy here tonight, but if there are some members of the public who would like to comment on this topic, please raise your hand and please try to keep your comments to 2 minutes or less if you can, in the interest of time. I see Jamie.
Thank you, everybody. I'm speaking partially on behalf of the downtown businesses, and there are a couple of other members on the call who may have things to add. But I'm relieved to hear you bring all of those ideas back to the table. When we looked at the packet that Josue put out for the upcoming village council meeting, most of those solutions were not on it. So we wanted to make sure that those would stay on the plate. But from what I'm hearing you say, we need to take that up with council to make sure all of those options that you just discussed stay on the table. Is that correct? Or will you be specifically talking about some of these suggestions when you make the charge to council?
Well, I don't think that's what our recommendation will be tonight. I think we haven't actually formulated what our recommendation would be tonight. Just getting sort of a sense of the Planning Commission and looking around at people's faces on my computer screen, people seem generally pleased with the ideas that were initially proposed for the comprehensive land use plan. So. Okay, well, that's great. If we can keep all that stuff on. And just while I have all of your attention, when there have been studies done in the past, they've often been not during our busy time. So Laura, I saw your post about you counting the spaces, but September is one of our slowest months. And so it's our slowest month, but January, February, and September are very slow for us. And I do about a quarter of my business from Black Friday to Christmas. And then we've got all of the activities that happen in the summer and we're in the middle of COVID. So counting right now is not really a good indication of what our needs are on a normal basis. So I just wanted to add that into it. And the other thing is that we've kind of come up with an idea for a wayfinding app downtown, and I shared that idea with Josue, and then somehow paid parking got put into it all, and unanimously the downtown businesses are very opposed to paid parking. We are an ecosystem that feed off of each other, and rushing people out of town, it doesn't serve any of us. So we just want to strongly say that that's a no for us. And if everything you talked about today stays on the discussion plate, I think that's all I really have to say today. Okay. Thank you very much, Jamie. I'm just going to go with the next hand I see. Is it Bernadine? Yeah, again, try to limit your comments to about 2 minutes. I think you're muted right now, Bernadine.
Okay, thank you. We've sent you, the residents on Elm and Phillip Street have sent a letter as well as an addendum that has laid out our objections to the parking on Elm and Phillip Street. We don't object to people parking on Elm and Phillip Street. And as for the argument that, well, gee, September is a slow month. I've lived on Phillip Street for 30 years. And I can tell you that in the midst of high summer, in the midst of the winter, there is parking along Phillip Street and west of Winter Street. The number of parking spaces, I think you really need to calculate how many parking spaces there are that are available parallel parking as it is now. And I don't know that it will be a negligible addition of spaces. There's other reasons the residents are resisting this related to safety. And I recall when the land use plan was being discussed for ratification, it was pointed out that because of the historic nature of Yellow Springs, there's a possibility of at some point establishing a historic district, which this neighborhood would be in the center of. I have been in villages and towns all over this state and watched what happens to beautiful neighborhoods when they turn into parking lots. And that will be what happens to this neighborhood with residents who care for their properties, enjoy the neighborhood, and with a community that enjoys this neighborhood, walking, biking, skating, their dogs. You can read the addendum that I provided to the letter. But we're not suggesting a $50,000 study, but I promise you, if you canvass every resident on this block, they are going to tell you that with the exception of street fare, parking is always available. Maybe you need signage to say, you can park here along this street, but putting nose-in parking will damage the neighborhood's charm and create safety issues. And we're uniformly opposed to it, those of us who pay taxes and live here.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to go, Terry, again, brief comments, please. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I agree. I've heard comments tonight that this is a well thought out plan, but anyone who's looked at this space knows that there are plenty of parking spaces. And I think if we had signage that sent people over here, they could use it, because we see this space empty all year long. And I know Jamie Sharp talked about it being seasonal, but actually it's not. I mean, these spaces are wide open. The only time we see a few cars here are when people are coming to play games on Mills Lawn, or when people come to church on Sunday. And that's very, very temporary. So there's plenty of basically parallel parking. And so I don't see the need, and never have seen the need, of coming in here and laying out a lot of blacktop and nose-in parking when it just isn't needed. Now, if it is needed, well, certainly we would all go along for that, but it isn't. So that's my input right now. It just isn't needed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Let's see, so is it Dino?
Hi, guys, thanks. Hey, I just want you to look at one thing. If you're going to make a recommendation, Jamie touched on it. I know there was a material that came out about paid parking. Dead set against it. No reason for it. If there's one thing that comes out of this recommendation tonight that goes up to council, there should be no paid parking. Laura, you could speak to that. I think years ago we talked about this with Wilmington when you had paid parking down there and what transpired. I think when you were a city manager, if you want to speak on that, but that was that's something that's imperative, that we don't want to see paid parking. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for the brief comments, Dino. Lindsay, brief comments, please.
Yes, I just wanted to point out quickly one thing that we run into over and over again as business owners is that people don't know where they can park, and people don't know where available parking spaces are. So if you're seeing vacancies around Mills Lawn. I would say what Jamie alluded to earlier, our wayfinding app and better signage for those things would be one fix for those problems. Also, I want us to get second Dino's sentiment about paid parking and also your assessment that another study isn't necessarily needed. And I would urge swift action on the part of council and this commission. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Lindsay. Is it Mary? Brief comments?
Hi, I can be very brief because I'm concurring with people who have already talked. I agree, not a big study. We don't need a big study. I concur that as a resident on Phillips, that busiest days, sunny days before COVID, when people have been out after being vaccinated, plenty of parking on Elm and Phillips. I concur also with wayfaring signage. That'd be great. We're relatively close to downtown, just a few blocks away. It's a great place to park. It's a great place for people to park when they use Mills Lawn, visit neighbors, go downtown. I just hope that really is a true discussion of the needs, the true needs, and all the different possibilities. An app sounds great. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you. Okay, anybody else who hasn't spoken already?
I see
Carol's
hand up.
Wants to speak.
Okay, Carol is not on my screen, but I'll take your word for it, Carol.
I haven't figured out
you
how to work the little wave hand. I'm sorry.
I can see you now.
Okay, thanks. I guess I want to concur with everybody, but I think you got in your package a photograph I took Sunday at 2:37 on a holiday weekend, and there is one car parked on the Mills Lawn side of Phillips, and that is a resident car. Now, we do have people park there. They're almost always going to Mills Lawn Park, so it's not like people don't know they can't park there. I have no objection to parallel parking. And also, I'm not an engineer, but I went out and I did Google Maps and that sort of thing, and using a 25-foot long parking space, which is what Google said is fairly generous, I count that we have 20 parallel parking spots there, and the plan calls for 33. Although on the rendering, I only counted 25. So the question is are we going to change the total nature of a neighborhood for 13 parking spots? It's not like it's going to add that much. And I guess that's all I have to say. Oh, I do want to say that pedestrians and bicyclists use that a lot, including we see people who are like very shaky on their rollerblades or just learning how to ride bicycles. They go down that street fairly often because it's a safe street with low traffic. And I think part of that is because of the green space, and it's just an easy street to navigate. So thanks for listening to me.
Yep, thank you, Carol. All right, is that now I've gotten everybody who's wanted a chance to speak? Okay, we'll bring it back to Planning Commission then. As far as formulating a recommendation that we can pass on to council. Any ideas, thoughts? Laura?
Well, let's send it all up. Oh, go ahead.
Laura?
Go ahead, Sarah. Go ahead.
No, Susie, you go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think that we ought to make a motion that we're recommending there not be a study, and that all of the plans that were in our packet are on the table for them to consider.
What about adding to that emphasis on wayfaring signage and then an electronic app?
Absolutely, and no fees for parking.
And no fees or no paid parking.
Yes.
Could we exclude the Phillips and Elm Street parking and just talk about like the parking in the lots and not try to do so much with the on-street parking?
I don't think we should exclude it, because if they just want to pave where the parallel is to make it more look like parking that could be used right now, instead of doing it backed out, but if they paved it, it might look more like parking with signs. And then, because I've lived here for 5 years. I've come here, I had no idea I could park there.
I agree with Sarah.
Well,
I'd say leave it on there, say that, they need to talk to the residents about the, going back, but I think they'll be able to address it on their end with a public hearing.
Okay. Well, I mean, all right. Is there some way we can just say then we're not really in favor of the angled parking? We're totally okay with parking on the streets, with the wayfaring signs, with not having paid parking. I'm finding these arguments about that this would change the nature and the sort of like the feel of those neighborhoods if you tried to have angled parking. I'm thinking it's compelling.
I agree with you. I think that's compelling. And I think the point that if there were signs and everything, and people know they can parallel park, let's do that first. Yeah. And then if you come to a point in time, so many years down the road that, we still have no place to parking, then we can consider other options.
So a recommendation that would include signage, or an application directing people that they can parallel park there, but that if anything is going to be done to change the parking configuration on Phillips and Elm Street down the line, that needs to be given careful consideration and plenty of public input.
Yes.
I also think it's important to, especially because I imagine this is going to be after the levy, that they talk to the school depending on what happens to see, what additional changes the school would request. I know it's a huge safety issue now every day, dropping and picking up kids. It really needs to be, figured out, and it's some slight modification at that property. If the property is still used for whatever could happen, it would be worth following back up depending on what happens to the levy.
Okay, shall I try to formulate what everybody said into some sort of a motion that, so I'll sort of state it first before actually making it a motion, so we don't have to worry about amending it. We can get it modified in the meantime. So we want to probably have a motion where we basically recommend the materials that are in the diagrams that were in the comprehensive land use plan, and that we don't believe we need to do a full parking study.
Correct.
That we should not have paid parking or fee for parking. That we need an emphasis on wayfaring signage and probably wayfaring electronic app. And a little caveat that if anything is done to change the current parking configuration from parallel to angle parking on Phillips and Elm Street, that is obviously a particularly sensitive area that council will need to take to tread upon very cautiously based on the feedback we've heard so far. So I'm sorry, is that Judy?
Yeah, it is, because what we're going to pass on to council contemplates the nose-in parking. So it's saying, give council the materials from the comprehensive land use plan to consider, with caveat that planning commission is recommending parallel rather than nose-in parking for the Phillips and Elm Street area.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody?
And Frank, I have one more suggestion to add to your motion. It's Brianne.
Oh, okay.
That you could ask council. You could ask council to request from Public Works how much each of those. I mean, you've got diagrams, but how much from Public Works, an estimate of what those plans would cost for the improvements as planning commission is presenting them for recommendations. So how much would it be to pave? How much would it be to put up the signage? How much would it be to stripe it?
So that we know the numbers.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because they're in budget season right now.
Well, and I might also just I just throw it out there, but I feel like Public Works might have some hesitation to wayfinding people to parking areas that are not improved. That is, from which they cannot adequately remove snow, from which they cannot adequately stripe for safety. They're not going to want to recommend parking in those areas. So when you talk about getting wayfaring signage and that kind of thing going on, I think Public Works is going to insist that those areas are, as you're now saying, improved and designated for parking, as opposed to just a gravel strip that you could park on.
Okay. Yeah, so, but that the wayfaring signage and application could be modified as more parking spaces are improved over time.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So, do we have a sense for what we're suggesting to council then? Judy, do you have that kind of a summary?
So what I have for your motion is that Planning Commission recommends to council that there are no further studies done regarding parking at this time, that the materials from the comprehensive land use plan be considered with the caveat that Planning Commission is recommending parallel parking rather than nose-in parking for Phillips and Elm, that there are no fees charged for parking, and should I say in the downtown area, or is that wide?
In the area.
Yeah, I kind of got the sense they didn't want any paid parking because the concern is that you have someone who parks and then they're limited. If they only get a half an hour or an hour, then they're not going to get around all the different shops. So why have it at all? Yeah.
So I should say village wide, and then I mean obviously there's going to be a hearing at the council level. That's
right.
Not a
you gotta go back and keep putting coins in, or however you do the paid parking if it's done with an app. But also, we want to talk about the signs that are down there now for the hours, the limited hours.
I would like them removed because we're not enforcing it anyway.
We're mid-motion here.
I know.
We're finishing the motion here with Judy.
That wayfaring signage and a wayfaring app be implemented. We've got that, and then you're requesting an estimated cost for each of the parking options be provided by Public Works.
Okay. How does that sound? Ready for a motion? I will make that motion.
I second it.
Okay. Thank you. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes. Stiles?
Yes.
Green?
Yes.
Amend?
Yes.
Curlis?
Yes.
Thank you. Doden?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Can I say something? We did not hear about Corey Street, which I know Nick Budis has some strong opinions about, as do I. And also Beatty Hughes, the neighbors on Glen Street, have some opinions. I'm just saying we're pushing this thing forward with limited information and input from certain interested parties. And pushing it forward doesn't mean, in my mind, that we're saying that this has to happen.
No.
Yeah. But that's commentary.
Okay. I was just going to say thank you, obviously, to members of the Planning Commission, but also thank all the members of the public who participated in this conversation as well. And thank you for, I know there was a lot more that could be said, but thank you for, in the interest of time, condensing your comments as much as you could. So, all right. What happened to my agenda? There it is, here in front of me. So that gets us up. Is there anything for new business, Judy or Denise, that we need to be aware of? Okay. Agenda planning?
The preliminary PUD plan for the Ober development for November. And the Emporium's coming with an outdoor patio because they're going to be serving beer and wine, and they want to use the outdoor patio that they have. They're looking into. I explained to them that they're going to have fencing around it. So they're going to have to look at how they got to work with Department of Liquor on that, but they're coming for the basically being able to have the outdoor patio with the serving of alcohol. And then Antioch may be coming for a text amendment. And I'm still waiting I haven't received the application for the Winds for their outdoor patio yet.
I would ask, perhaps Judy might be the better person to ask, since we're going to have a PUD coming up on November, if you could make sure well in advance to send that that voting script thing that I came up with for going through PUDs to all the members of the Planning Commission who will be there so that they can read through that. And because I think that does help to clarify what can be a pretty complicated process for going through the PUD voting. So,
Frank, is that the one you passed out at the joint meeting with council?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I do have that.
Okay. All right. Do we have anything else for tonight?
I was wondering if Denise, if you could ask council to see if it would be appropriate if we look at adding the requirement for screening when commercial businesses abut up to residential neighborhoods for new additions and everything. So, the lights and the noise and everything can be blocked at the parking lot.
Okay. And honestly, we can just bring that here and then take it to council. So maybe we can add that as a discussion. Yeah. Maybe not at the November meeting, because I think the PUD alone, if it's just by itself, is going to be pretty big.
I actually, with that comment, I have a question for Planning Commission in general. Would you want to consider starting at 6 o'clock for that meeting? It looks very in the weeds.
Okay. That's fine with me.
So I'll send around a quick question to everyone and then make sure that it's noticed well in advance if in fact you do agree to that.
Okay.
Good. Sounds good.
Anything else? All right. In that case, I will make a motion that we adjourn for the evening.
Thank you, everyone.
So a second? Second. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much for your help. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night.